All right. Hey, howdy, and hello there, folks. Welcome into Tier 1 Dynasty Fantasy. Mike here with me. I'm Tank. Today we're going to start off our first episode with the ones. Episode 1, start with the ones. Let's get into it. All right. So, getting right into this here. Start out with our quarterbacks. I think it's going to be Lamar. I think Lamar is coming back into the season healthy. He spent his offseason really working on his passing game. He's in a contract year. So the only downside I see, he's got an unproven receiver core around him. But I'll get to them in just a minute. Last year, we saw like the intensity of the Ravens' offense really increase around the passing game. Lamar went from 25 pass attempts to 32, and that could step up even more going into this year. He did maintain kind of a league average, median average of 66 or 64%. He's done that the last 2 years. I mean, it's good. It's not great, but it's good. So any improvement in that obviously will bolster those numbers, get him up there. With being 25, I mean, he hasn't even reached running back peak age. So he could still utilize his legs to get some rushing downs, get some extra work in there. I definitely think this offense is still going to be centered on Lamar. The running game, he's going to be splitting it with the running backs, especially getting Gus and JK back, but they're not going to be healthy.
I want to jump in real quick on one thing on it that I noticed, and it's one of the main reasons I pulled him back a little bit from last year. In his 2009 MVP season, and I'm looking at game script, the game script averages here. And a game script average is the point differential at any point in any game that season. A positive value indicates that the team's often playing with a lead, and a negative value indicates the team is often playing from behind. In his MVP season, he had a plus 7.39. In 2020, when he was QB 10, he had plus 6.62. And in 2021, his QB 15, he was minus 1.29. I feel like I understand what you're saying when you're talking about his passing attempts going up per week this past season and him maybe taking that next step in the passing game. But I feel like a lot of it had to do with that porous defense. We all know Baltimore pretty well. We all know Harbaugh pretty well. And I don't think that's how they want to play the game in Baltimore. They're going to get a healthy Gus back, get a healthy JK back. You got to wonder if that running game takes over some of those games where they were trailing so much in, and you got to wonder if his passing numbers fall down a little bit. But with that said, they had that same game script in 2019 when it was an MVP season, and he was the number one quarterback overall. So maybe it's a process of them actually going back to what they were, and that leads to Lamar finding his success again by being able to utilize the play action, open up the field, pull safeties up, and get guys like Mark Andrews on the top of the safeties, things like that. Without Hollywood, I'm really interested to see somebody's going to have to step in and take over that over the top. But they've got plenty of young guys for speed. They don't have to catch the ball. They just have to make the defense think about that.
Right, which that's why I brought in the receivers as well with some of my info. We got Rashad Bateman. He's forecasted to be their wide receiver one. We all know Mark Andrews is going to get a lot of targets, still predicated to him. And Hollywood left. So there's 100 targets there that have got to go somewhere. Rashad started last year on a 5-week IR with a growing pull, reactivated at week 9. I think he's really got like a second-year breakout kind of written all over him. Duvernay is the guy that seems like he's forecasted to be the Hollywood field stretcher type guy. He's got speed, but you haven't seen him do anything else. So Tylan Wallace is the other one that I'm excited to see if he's going to do anything. He was when he was in Oklahoma State, he had 86 receptions, 1,400 yard season. So he can put up the numbers. He's got 4.5 speed. That's decent speed. That's all you need. He had the last 2 years of his college career, he had 900 yards each. Came in last year with some injuries. Just didn't really get it there. So I'm interested to see if they've put in some work with him and he's done the work as well. A lot of people are on James Proche. He could be seen as the cheap Porsche.
I'm one of those guys. I'm all over James Proche this year.
Yeah,
he's great profile, Texas.
Huge. Well, the SMU.
Proche is at SMU? Oh, it's Duvernay was at Texas. That's my bad.
Yeah,
Duvernay was from Texas.
Proche really has he has 4.5 speed as well, 4.55. Both he and Tylen. Proche really profiles kind of like Willie Snead. So he can be good in stretches, but you just got to give him the ball and see what happens. Biggest benefactor from all of this is going to be Mark Andrews. He effectively he effectively was the tight end one in most formats last year for fantasy. He'll get some of those shares that were avoided by Marquise being traded away. So
you would hope so.
They've improved their offensive line. They added Lindenbaum and Fa'alele. So Fa'alele, he's from Australia, 6'8", huge beast of a man.
How long did you spend practicing that name?
Not very long, living in Hawaii. And then Tyler, he can go anywhere on the interior, guard, either guard, center, wherever they need him, he's going to be a great player. Then defense, they only really brought in Kyle Fuller, but they did bring in a couple guys through the draft that should help, but you never know. So that defense could still be mediocre because a lot of their division is going to be passing. So their Ravens defense was number one in rush, but I don't know how much that's going to help as the NFL is slowly shifting away from rushing so much. So, with that increase in passing, he's got some effective tools around him. The offense is going to keep people guessing. They're going to keep them not knowing, is this a run with Lamar? Is this going to be a run with the running back? Is he passing? What the heck's going on? So I think that still continues. I'm excited to see what they can do, but I really think Lamar can be the one with all the running, all his passing ability. He puts it together for another great year.
So if Lamar is going to be the number one QB again, he's going to throw for 36 touchdowns. He's going to have to do that again, right? He's never topped 3,500 yards, I think, in a year. I may be wrong on that. I know he hasn't topped 4,000.
No, definitely not below 4,000.
He's only thrown for over 300 yards in 3 games in his entire career. So, 36 touchdowns. Where do you predict those touchdowns to go?
I think they're really split between Mark Andrews and Rashad Bateman.
All 36.
Mostly. Between those two, yeah. I mean, they're going to be split between those guys.
I see if he's going to reach that number, I see it'll be a Bateman, Andrews. Andrews, of course, I think will be the top one of that. Just because I don't really know if we saw a lot of red zone out of Rashad Bateman last year, where he was showing that dominance to be able to go up and get the ball in the red zone and be like an Adam Thielen type. But then I also look at J.K. Dobbins, who has great hands out of the backfield, could utilize him, put him in motion, get him out on a linebacker singled up down on the 10-yard line area. But what I'm interested to see and what people should be keeping in mind, if you have Lamar Jackson rated as your number one overall quarterback this year, keep your eye on which receivers are popping in preseason when they're playing those games with Lamar when he's on the field. Who is he targeting besides Andrews and Bateman? And don't buy into just one big play hype. Look at the overall thing when the preseason's done with and go pick your guy, buy into him, and be sold on your conviction of that guy. Go for him. Make a move. I wouldn't shy away from putting a 2023 third rounder into any of those other guys just to have a piece of that if that's what you think Lamar Jackson's going to do for you next year.
Awesome. So we got through my guy. You're up. Let's hear it.
I'm up, and I'm going with the young gun out of L.A., the bad boy, the slinging it monster, Justin Herbert. This kid has looked fantastic his first 2 years in the league. He came in and was under pressure like it was going out of style. Finished even then respectably, right? Didn't have the worst season. Finished at QB 9 behind an offensive line that was getting him killed. They went out for 2021. They invest in the offensive line. They get a steal in the draft. Rashawn Slater just lifted them above, helped their run game immensely, and pushed Justin Herbert to a finish of second overall in 2021. In 32 games, Justin Herbert has a 66.2% completion percentage on 1,267 passes, a 5.4 touchdown percentage over 2 years, which is a little bit above league average. The average is about 4.5 to 4.2. 292 passing yards average per game. He's rushed for 234 yards in his first year and 302 in 2021. I know the big craze right now, right? Josh Allen has gone QB1 in back-to-back years.
With rushing.
Mostly based off his rushing, his goal line carries, his inflated numbers near the goal line. But Justin Herbert continues to move higher and higher up the ranks as far as he's throwing touchdowns, and he's coming back this year with the same crew of Keenan, Mike Williams, Eckler. I know they lost Cook, but they did everything they could to replace Cook's production in signing Gerald Everett and maintaining who they had there and Parham and McKitty. I don't see them falling off on that. You take into account Brandon Staley's aggressive play calling, how he continues to go after teams down the field, how he continues to put this game or their games in Justin Herbert's hands. And this kid could go from being the second quarterback overall last year to the number one quarterback this year. And honestly, I think make it look easy. You're talking 5,000 passing yards, over 40 touchdowns. Give him another 300 yards on the ground and 3 or 4 touchdowns. And that's my guy right there.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I definitely have him very highly ranked in my rankings. I think his passing ability is unprecedented, especially for what was foreseen as he came into the league. Most of the NFL fan base, let alone the Chargers fan base, were like, why the hell did they pick so high on this guy? And he's shown. He's shown why they did.
He even showed in Superflex League ADPs and Dynasties. Justin Herbert fell to the bottom of first rounds in Superflex Leagues to the early second round. Nobody believed in this guy. He came out of fucking nowhere.
Yep.
And he's just got the talent. He's got the demeanor.
And he's got it, yeah.
Yeah, love the way the kid plays. And like you're saying, kid just has it. And I want the guy who has it, who in his second year has done what he's done already, going into his third year. Not to mention, and I didn't bring this up yet, the additions they added to defense, what they put in on that team to become a competitor in that division they're in alone. You want to talk about some super shootouts about to come out of the AFC West.
That's actually one of my notes. Kind of why I didn't pick Herbert. They're either going to have absolute shootout blowouts to make it happen, or it's going to be a giant defensive struggle for all 6 of those conference matchups.
I don't think any of the defenses in the AFC West are good enough to limit these offenses. They haven't done it in the past.
Yeah.
These defenses, something like goddamn tooth. These defenses have allowed Patrick Mahomes to be a top 5 quarterback. They've allowed Derek Carr to hover around low end or high end wide quarterback 2 numbers. Hell, they made Drew Lock look good sometimes. Now you're going to bring in Russ into Denver. Herbert in where he's at. He's, of course, still putting up numbers. So sometimes good defenses get out-routed by a good offense. And I don't really see any of the defenses being so above and beyond in that division that in these 6 games that these 4 teams are going to play, I think you're going to see high scoring in this. You're going to see great fantasy points. Generally, even I have a general disposition of staying away from, not staying away, but understanding and being realistic when teams are playing divisional teams to lower my expectations on fantasy points, because those teams know the other team's tendencies and how they roll and how things are going. And generally those are closer to median scoring games. I don't think anybody in the AFC West can have a goddamn chance. And it's going to come down to who has the ball in the end of the fourth quarter and is driving down to get that game-winning field goal or scoring that last-second touchdown.
Yep, very well could. One of the things that really was a big difference for me going in improvements, Herbert had a great first year to second year improvement. To me, that's where Lamar had a bigger jump. He gained 32 more yards a game in the last year. He only had a 12-game sample, but he was still able to make huge marks, passing most of his previous years. Herbert only had a 5-yard a game improvement. But if Herbert would have had Lamar's rate, he would have gained 39 yards a game, pushing him over 300. What I do like about Herbert, though, is still very consistent passer, 65% completion rate.
66, boy. Get your numbers right.
65.1.
66.2.
I'll look that up. All right.
Yeah, let's get in some running backs here.
Yeah. Let's move on with the show here already. Jeez. Enough with the quarterbacks.
Quit holding me up.
Yeah. I chose CMC. I think he's coming back into the season healthy. I think we've seen it all. He's done it all. In all but 3 of the games he played, which were games he went out on injury, he had 20-plus fantasy points every game, no matter what. No matter the Darnold they have at quarterback or Bridgewater or used to be Cam, he just continues to put out. One of the things that put me over the top with him, we play a lot of PPR or half PPR, he's still going to get that volume, but they're also talking about moving him into a slot position, breaking away some of that coverage so he's not getting so much physical work throughout the whole game, and you can still run him in sweeps. You're still going to get him the ball. It's just figuring out another way to put him more dynamic into the offense. And we saw that with Darren Sproles, LaDainian Tomlinson. As they got a little bit older, they couldn't be so physical. But start moving around the offense, they're just as involved. They're just as volatile.
I am a believer in CMC this year. I have in plenty of leagues, and I won't get rid of him. I did trade him a couple of times, but I got good returns, good hauls back, team rebuilding returns. And that was the only situation I would let CMC go right now, is if it is something where you were holding on to him as a centerpiece in your team for the past 2 years and you've been a believer, and now you're trying to get rid of him. Hopefully you can find another believer and you can get 3 starters out of him. I'm not saying you're going to get Tyreek Hill and, Michael Carter, I guess, would be a lower end running back, and then maybe another low end wide receiver, something like that, and all be able to plug into your flex spots for CMC.
Yeah, bolster the roster.
Yeah, bolster that roster. Get more depth into your starting lineup,
or some youth. I mean, if you're not going to think you're going to even make the playoffs, don't have CMC and start retooling.
And that's where I think a lot of people are messing up and trying to deal CMC, is that they're gearing way too much towards, I need to get 3 firsts for him, or 2 firsts and a second, and it's just slow down on what you're trying to do there, and maybe go try to get just a couple guys you're big on that are maybe going to come into a second or third year breakout and retool your team back up. You have to find the perfect recipe of manager with draft picks who is competing and willing to take on the risk of CMC. And there's a few and far between in between leagues. So you end up just stuck with him on your roster, which isn't the worst thing ever, right? So I am a CMC believer. However, I do believe that it's not wear and tear that's causing his injuries. I think it's just the fact that he's getting older. And the older you get, we all know, the more your body breaks down, let alone the fact that you're playing in the NFL as a running back. The amount of touches he's seen, it's nothing Derrick Henry style, but he's still seeing a lot of touches for a guy that's his size.
Yeah.
I honestly believe that he may have handed over some of that between the tackles running. The signing of Dante Foreman shows that. Draft of Juba Hubbard shows that. And it's not to say he's not going to get good usage. I just don't think that he'll have the actual amount of potential touches to get to RB1. I have some stats here. 2019, his fantasy points per game were 29.3. In 2020, there were 30.1. And remember, in 2019, he was the RB overall 1. Last year, his average per game, and granted, there were games he left early, so it's just an overaccumulation of all his fantasy points.
Yeah, 2 of the 3 games he left, yeah.
Yeah, it's 18.2. To continue with that, 2019, his snap share was 98.4%. Opportunity share, 91.5%. 2020, 75.9 snap share and 83% opportunity share. In 2021, 59% snap share and 64.5% opportunity share. The numbers are showing you that Carolina is realizing that having Christian McCaffrey on the field opens up their offense. He's going to be able to give them a better opportunity to be successful on offense, but they cannot continue to give him the snap shares and opportunity shares they had in the past because he's done too much of that already. Put enough wear and tear on him. Like any running back in the NFL, the more times they handle the ball, every time they handle the ball at a certain point of touches, they become more and more at risk of being hurt, injured, or slightly ineffective. That still doesn't take me away on anything. Austin Eckler did it last year at an older age in a high-powered offense. The only difference is I don't think CMC's in a high-powered offense this year. Matt Corral could come. Like I'm big on. Well, they were pretty decent. I mean, you think about when Cam was there and the offenses they were running, and Cam was great about getting the ball to CMC. I worry that if Darnold and Corral cannot figure out a way to get him the ball outside of design plays, right, where it's a passing play and CMC is a chip block guy, a chip block guy that goes into the linebacker area and gets a dump down. I don't know if those two are going to be able to do that to bolster those numbers for him, but I still believe in Christian McCaffrey being a 20 to 25 point a game, fantasy points per game guy. That's league winning because right now where you're getting him at in startups, I know he's roughly around the middle of the second round, but in trading him and going and getting him, you could actually probably get him for a pretty cheap deal if you have good depth on your team, and I wouldn't shy away from that one bit.
Yeah, one of the things that really pushed me over to Christian is I think Matt Rule's job is going to depend on the success of the team this year, and for the team to succeed, they need Christian McCaffrey.
I would agree with that.
I think he's going to do the not awesome thing, but the thing that best benefits him and push him onto the field.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how they're using this year. And I think it'll be interesting. You'll know what you're going to get out of CMC for the year right off the bat. If they're gonna take the reins off him and just let him run, you're going to see it right away. I would be super concerned if it started the year and they had him on like a pitch count of any sort, or if you saw Dante Foreman coming in on short yardage.
Oh, a 3-down rotation. You'd worry about a three-back rotation.
Yeah.
That's going to hurt CMC the most.
Yeah, you hope to hell that doesn't happen.
Yep. All right, enough with my guy. Who you got?
Oh, buddy, I got the big fucking moose, Jonathan Taylor, coming out of Indianapolis. Taylor handled 332 carries along with 40 receptions last year. He is a workhorse running back. There are not that many workhorse running backs in the NFL. I know there's a lot of big Naheem Hines talk. Are we really going to listen to what Frank Reich has to say about who you should have on your fantasy football team? Hell no. This is the same guy that traded for Carson Wentz to lead his team last year. I'm not listening to a fucking thing that guy's going to say.
Well, I bought into Naheem last year, and what did that get me?
Exactly. Now, Naheem Hines had a great year with Phillip Rivers, but we all knew that was going to happen. Yeah, Rivers checks down to the running backs all the damn time. That's not to say that Matt Ryan isn't that same type of quarterback. Matt Ryan also, while checking down to Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman when they were in Atlanta, and they were good out of the backfield, he still fed Julio Jones and a secondary wide receiver. So I don't need to hear all this crap about he's just going to pitch it down to Hines, and Hines is going to be out there. There's a reason that Jonathan Taylor caught 40 passes last year, and that's because he can do it.
Yeah.
I know he didn't do it in college, but it's time to get over that stigma. He's in his second year. He got 40 passes last year. Buy into it and be okay with it. Jonathan Taylor also led the league last year via player profiler with 92 touches in the red zone. You give me 92 touches over 17 fucking games on a high-powered Indianapolis Colts offense, I'll take that all damn day. He had a 41. Here's the beauty of this one. This is what gets me, because everybody is so hyped up on how good Indianapolis's offensive line is. And yes, they rate high, right? They rate high and everything.
Oh, they're starting to get that age hump, though.
Just like Dallas did when they had to start to retool, and they haven't really retooled. The Indy offensive line had a 55.3 run blocking rate that was at the 42 percentile in the NFL. Jonathan Taylor had a 44.4% juke rate, number one in the NFL. 165 evaded tackles last year, number one in the NFL. Number one in yards created. That's his O-line. That's when he's on his own. He's past the O-line. They're not helping anymore. He's doing that on his own. Number one in the NFL. This kid doesn't need a great offensive line, and he's got an above average, by far, offensive line already.
Oh, yes.
And rushed for 1,800 yards last year. Sign me up for another year of that. 264 routes run was number 10 in the NFL last year. 9 yards per reception was number 9 in the NFL last year. and there was no notable additions that came in to take over for Taylor doing any type of thing in the passing game. Hines is still there. He's going to see the same amount of workload. Alec Pierce was drafted, but he's going to be a rookie wide receiver, and he's a big body. He's not a short. He's not a small guy that's going to be eating up small stuff in space where Taylor's at catching passes.
So you're saying of course season?
Hell no. Hell no. Hell no. You know who my dark horse in Indy for the guy who's going to take that next step is Pittman. Like, I see Michael Pittman being fed by Matt Ryan like Matt Ryan fed Julio Jones in Atlanta. And if you can't see that, I don't know what the fuck you're looking at. Because it's gonna happen.
Well, that is my concern with JT, though, is Matt Ryan can spread the ball. Carson was playing out of his ass last year and had to put it somewhere. That Pittman and who last year?
Pittman.
Yeah, exactly. Their tight ends didn't do anything. They're none of the other receiving core. Carson was not premier Carson, but he just didn't show anything, so he had to check down. I mean, that was there. I mean, Jonathan Taylor had a great amount of work because he needed to be an escape valve.
So the side note of that is Taylor's primed for a breakout season because of Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan with Alec Pierce, Pittman, keeping defenses honest, pulling box counts out. Taylor could see lowered box counts, which just means less guys that he has to get through. Taking his juke rate, taking his evaded tackles, taking his own yards created into consideration. And now you've got him out there as a fucking monster going up against corners and safeties. I mean, we're talking about a guy. How much is this kid? He's 5'10", 226 pounds with a 4.39 40. Like, what safety in the NFL wants to get in the way of that guy?
Oh, yeah. A little cannonball.
Yeah. This lunchbox offense that they brought in, where it is just ground it, pound it, it's Frank Reich's forte. It's what he's always done. I think he tried to do it with Carson Wentz. When they had lean on Carson Wentz, the offense stalled. You can see that in games where, like the Jacksonville game, Taylor struggled in his hand and just so I think that's going to open that back up. His ability to break tackles, create big plays, coupled with his secured workload in the red zone, I think it's a recipe for repeating as the RB1 overall.
Yeah, and see, that's where I just see his targets dropping just a little bit more. Matt Ryan's a little more efficient spreading the ball around. A couple better receivers going into the year, so
and
that's how he's just off. What do you got? What's in the cup today?
It says, do the thing every day that makes you drunk, or do something. Do one thing every day.
That's how drunk you know you are.
Yeah, it's the first one. It's the first one.
I'm not numb.
Yeah, and it's the typical Jim Beam with a little bit of water in it. It's a little watered down now because I've been sitting here while I've been talking, but it still does the trick.
All right, let's move this on. CeeDee Lamb is my wide receiver one. Let's start it. Yeah, let's
start that fucking bandwagon. Isn't it full already?
No, I'm pulling it. I'm the goddamn tank. I'm pulling that bandwagon.
Yes.
For me, one of the things, and it's kind of prefaced in a lot of the choices I had this year for number ones, and that's volume. A lot of these guys are going to see ridiculous volume increase. CD is going to be one. He had 111 targets his first year, 120 last year, and that's with both Gallup and Amari there. With those two gone, because Gallup's not going to come in probably till mid-season, you're getting 162 voided targets. Where's that going to go? Are you going to give it all to Schultz?
To your mom.
Yeah, probably not. She's not a wide receiver. I mean, you got Fehoko, you got Tolbert, but those guys they'll vie for some volume, but it's going to be plugged into CeeDee Lamb. And that's where you're going to see him jump. You know, he gets 20 more targets. He's in the range of what Justin Jefferson did for his rookie year. Okay, he's got 40 more targets. That's what Justin Jefferson did last year. I just see this Washington or this offense evolving, and it's not going to be because of James Washington. We got Washington in there. Because he's already injured. Gallup is injured. Like these guys are full of injuries, and since CD has come onto the team, it's been primed for greatness between Dak and CD. The thing that he needs to get better at the most, he had 8 drops last year, which led the NFL. But his slot percentage, he can go inside and outside. He was only viewed as a slot coming in, which hurt him a lot in fantasy. I remember that, drafting him like, well, this guy's just a slot receiver. So is Judy. So is the other guy. Like that was the problem, is they were all seems slot players because they're such a slim frame. But he ran 2/3 of his routes out in the wide. He only got a third inside. So, with him being the number one, he's going to have to be moved all over to make opportunities for him and Dak to connect. So, they still got Kellen Moore there one more year before he gets a head coach job somewhere.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But he brought in, they changed out receiver coaches too. They brought in Robert Prince, who worked with Kellen Moore he worked as a receivers coach in Boise State when Kellen Moore was a receiver or the quarterback there and had his great years. When he went to Detroit, guess who was a wide receiver coach? Coaching the Megatron, Robert Prince. So he can coach greatness. He's coached Galladay, Golden Tate. Marvin Jones. He's coached some great receivers. I think this is just another time that he's going to add CD to that list of receivers that he's coached.
You know me. I am hanging on that bandwagon with you. And if you're the one tugging it, buddy, I am slapping the whip. Let's go, buddy. Come on now. Get her in there. I love CD Lamb this year. I really do. My only concern with CD, as far as if we're picking number one overalls, he's never done it on his own. He's always had an Amari Cooper there. He's always had a Michael Gallup or a Blake Jarwin when he was healthy. Dalton Schultz this past year stepping up big. So I don't know how defenses are going to react to him. He is probably going to get fed. I just don't know he's the kind of guy you can force feed. I know his per man route rate win is 36.5%, 37.1% against zone. That ranked 42 among qualified wide receivers last year. To me, that's an inflated stat. He played a lot better than that. His contested catch rate was 31.6% on 19 targets. So, again, you still haven't seen him have to be the guy that's beating double. Don't think Devontae Adams with Aaron Rodgers, right? Like, it didn't matter. Devontae Adams was beating double coverage all the damn time.
Oh, yeah.
So those are my only real concerns with Lamb is, can he take over as the number one guy, the guy that even the defense knows you're going to be number one. But I think Dallas did a really good job this year. Jalen Tolbert is sneaky fucking good, and I think he's really good in that offense.
He's already getting raves and reviews. So
yeah, they're going to run 3 wide receiver sets. People being down on Dalton Schultz. Here's the thing that people are always mistaken about with Dallas's offense. When they get into the red zone, their receiver touchdown numbers are always a little lower than league average, or as far as the elites, because they showcase their running backs and tight ends.
Oh, they still have a damn good running back for the goal line.
Both Zeke and Pollard are good out of the backfield catching the ball. Schultz is really good in the red zone too. But all it's going to take is a little bit of things to go right for CD. The target share, the targets that got voided out with Cooper leaving. We all know, Gallup had a late ACL, and we all know it takes at least another year for those guys to actually come back to full health and full go. So it'll be, like you're saying, it'll be halfway through the year before he's actually pulling coverage and at 100%, quote unquote. But it'll be next year. I feel that Gallup, who signed his new contract, will be more viable to the offense. So this year it's the CD show, and it just comes down to, hey, if you can answer these questions the right way as far as how you handle being the number one guy, man, fuck to the moon, wheels up on that kid.
The one thing that really did push me all the way up is Dak. CD's first year, Dak got injured.
Yep.
Last year, he's coming back from a broken, fractured leg. Yeah, that wasn't 100%. He wasn't driving on the ball like he could. I think that's what's going to be the big difference maker. Coming into the season healthy, full go. They had a season to work together as Dak is recovering. So this offseason, I'm sure they've been working together. They're just going to be that much more fluent and
anybody
more volume. So
yep. And anybody who wants to bitch about he led the league last year in in drops. Well, guess what? The year before, Deontay Johnson did. And what did he do? He finished like wide receiver 6 this year or something like that.
Well, and everybody was off him on fantasy.
Yeah.
They're like, no, this guy dropped the ball all the time.
Yeah. Oh, no. I got 120 targets and I dropped 8 of them. Fuck out of here. Fuck me, man.
That's a tiny
nitpicking right there. Just nitpicking. Don't we have, isn't there a bet in our big money league? Isn't there an AJ Brown, CeeDee Lamb bet going on?
I believe so. I don't remember.
Well, consider you think Lamb's going to be your number one. I know what side you're on that, but do you think AJB touches wide receiver 1 this year?
No.
No, he doesn't even get near the 12s. I agree.
No, in fact, I'm going to be probably looking to move him because just unless I have him stacked with Jalen, it just doesn't make sense to have him alone without the quarterback.
I'd rather have Goddard in that offense if I could stack up. There's a pretty decent trade right there. AJB, Goddard, and another wide receiver.
I think it's going to be a run show.
Yeah, like last year.
Yeah.
Overruns.
Oh, yeah.
Stomps.
Okay. We'll save that for another time. Who do you got for your number 1 wide receiver?
You goddamn well know I got JJ Jess in there. That kid, man. So he's already showed out in his first 2 years in the NFL. He's proven he started slow his first year, but still ended up as a top 5 wide receiver in his rookie year. This past year, just stacked on top of that. And he's been doing it in an offense that it sucked. It was a terrible offense. Zimmer wanted to do nothing but just run the ball, control the ball, play defense, and his defense was terrible. Now they bring in Kevin O'Connell.
To his Bengals days.
Yep. Now they're bringing in O'Connell. And O'Connell, is going to bring in a McVay-style offense. That McVay-style offense is always 3 wide receiver sets. Justin Jefferson is going to, in my opinion, get moved into the slot more than people are probably knowing is going to happen. His slot snaps last year was 167 slot snaps. That's a 17.3% rate. That's disgusting. For a guy this talented, and the fact that you could put out 3 wide receivers and put him in the slot and get him either move in the top corner for the other team and make him guard him going either way, or get him matched up against a lower end corner, and you didn't do it but 167 times, that's fucking crazy to me. In comes Kevin O'Connell. Kevin O'Connell jumps in, and you look at what Cooper Kupp did last year. He did it all from the slot. And Cooper Kupp did play before last year. He played a lot on the outside, moved in and out. Last year, where was Cooper Kupp last year? Always in the slot. Always in the slot.
You used to be a defensive back. What is so different about covering an outside receiver on the line and a slot that's off?
As a corner, generally you want to take your wide receiver. You want to force him to go where you want him to go, right? And so if he's lined up on the outside and you want him to go to the sidelines, you can take away that inside route, right? You just line up on his inside shoulder. You force him to the outside. And in doing that, you limit patterns he can run against you. You limit moves he can make from you. You cut down space, right? If they are lined up in the slot, they can go wherever the fuck they want. And sure, you can take away, like I'm going to take away the inside route because I don't want to get beat quick, right? I don't want to get a slant right in my face. But if that guy, if you give him that outside room, now you're giving him all the sidelines and he can run away from you and you're instantly in a trail position. If a guy cuts out to the outside and you're stuck back on his back hip,
that's a bad spot to be behind him.
It's one quick cut, and he's catching a quick out route from Kirk Cousins, and he's upfield, and it's 8-9 yards, and there's just shit you can do about it.
Or a juke and 20-30 yards later.
Exactly, and you can see Cooper Kupp does it a lot. Cooper Kupp will give a guy what he'll make the move where the guy is giving him, right? So if a guy lines up inside of him, he will take the 2-step jump off of the line of scrimmage, plant a foot, let the guy get even with him, and if you've never heard the phrase, I'm going to tell it to you now. If we're even, I'm leaving. And Cooper Kupp would turn and go where the hell he wanted to. And now that guy has to turn all the way back around to get back to Cooper Kupp. At that point, he's fucking wide open. And the quarterback's just going to quick dump off, and they're going to eat you alive. Mm-hmm. Justin Jefferson in an offense like that could be monstrous. I'm going to go ahead and say it. He could match what Kupp did last year. He could literally match what Kupp did last year. He's a great quarterback. They have great reports. Not their first year together. Mm-hmm. O'Connell's going to want to come in. They didn't do shit to the defense, so they're still going to be throwing the ball a lot to keep up with points. They've got a good running game to keep defenses honest. You talk about a 29.9% target share for Justin Jefferson last year, was number 4 in the NFL. Watch that rise up into Devontae Adams numbers. I already said the 167 slot snaps ranked, and I put exclamation points in my notes over that. Stupid. Why are you only letting this guy play on the inside 17% of his snaps? He's too talented. He was number 1 in the NFL last year with 1,996 air yards. He saw 23 red zone targets with 12 receptions. That was number 8 in the NFL. So he's a trusted red zone target. 47.5% route win rate was number 10 in the NFL. That means that almost half of his routes he's running, he's winning. And they just need to get him the goddamn ball. 34 deep targets was number 1 in the NFL. This prediction is solely based on the offensive line of O'Connell coming in. JJ should see a higher target share number. His potential to be utilized in ways that he hasn't in the past under the previous regime could mean ginormous leaps. His touchdowns should go up for the 3rd straight year. He had 7 in 2020, 10 in 21. I could easily see 13, 15 out of it coming up this year. Along with more targets, he had 167 in 21. Bump that. How can you not see this guy getting 180, 190 targets? He'll get fed this year. He's going to get fed this year. He's going to get fed this year. And could you imagine? I mean, he got 167 last year, so just throw 23 more targets on there, right? 1 or 2 more targets a game.
But where are those targets coming from? You've got the same receiving core essentially coming back. They didn't get voided.
He still saw a 29.9% target share last year. Those are Devontae Adams numbers, and that's with Adam Thielen, KJ Osborne. They didn't add any tight ends. They just brought Irv Smith back. It's not like he's dynamic. The only guy who
I was confused by that move. I thought Tyler Conklin did great.
He did well, yeah. But Irv Smith was the guy. If Irv Smith doesn't get hurt this past year,
right? But
we don't know who Tyler Conklin is.
ACL injury, and he's going to need another year to get back.
He had a meniscus.
We see it every year with ACLs. Like that first year back, it was
okay. It was a meniscus.
Oh, it was. He had an ACL.
No, it was a meniscus, and he ended up having to have surgery on it, and they just put him on IR because it happened so early, and they were like, instead of the roster spot, right? They needed the roster spot, so if instead of having this guy come back in week 13, they just IR'd him. But it was just a meniscus tear they took care of. And yeah, if Irv Smith doesn't go down, we don't know who Tyler Conklin is, right? He just came into the fold because he was the next man up.
Yeah.
Irv Smith is not that dynamic. He's just another Alabama tight end that can't do fuck all. OJ Howard. Fuck out of here with all that. So yeah,
and that's what had me off J-Jets is just a new offensive regime coming in. You know, sometimes it takes a year to click, sometimes it doesn't, but that's just enough for me to not be on him. Where CD and Dak, they've been together. It's the same offensive coordinator, same plan. Everything's moving forward with CD as the one.
Yeah.
So to me, that's where I get it. You know, CD, but it's hard to deny J-Jets gets that volume to just push him over.
To add on to that, if he's bringing in, think about if we're going to do comparisons, right? And that's kind of what's bullshitting is that I'm putting in that O'Connell's going to bring over a McVay style offense.
Mm-hmm.
And so we compare the Vikings offense to the Rams offense as far as player personnel. So Adam Thielen, Robert Woods, Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, KJ Osborne, Van Jefferson, or whatever 3 or 4 fucking guys have been in that spot. Dalvin Cook. Think about Todd Gurley. Look how dangerous that offense was. Jared Goff made Cooper Kupp the number 4 wide receiver in Sean McVay's offense when they had a Todd Gurley type, and now you've got Dalvin Cook back there. So
and Madison, either way, they're still good no matter what back is there.
Yeah, wheels up on those boys. Wheels up on the Vikings this year.
Oh, that's awesome.
Move us along here, bud.
I guess so. All right. I'm sticking with like the old school team in most of my stuff here. I've got Travis Kelce. I mean, Lamar, Kelce, CMC. Geez, I'm 2018. I'm going to win this thing.
Stacked. Hashtag stacked.
And that's why it's Dynasty, too. If you've carried these players who just rode this wave out, you're still sitting in a great spot.
Oh, yeah. You're a playoff team.
Player, and that's something that it's taken a while to learn in Dynasty is carrying over elite. They're still elite. I mean, everybody was off Dalvin last season. Oh, he's going to age out. Well, he just did it again. Yeah. He just had a great season. Oh, Kelce just had another great season. Not much else you could do. But Tyreek's gone. And they brought in a whole bunch of...
You could say it. You could say the word shit.
I wrote some nice notes. It's a squad of rookies and some mediocre guys and some speedsters. But they're not Tyreek. They're not Tyreek.
Trash. It's trash.
So the check down, the scrambles, the volume of passing, it's all going to funnel right into Kelce. The touchdown or the red zone targets, it's all going to predicate all on Kelce. So the volume he's been seeing, everything, it's just one more time, it's going to flow through Kelce. And that's all I really have to say, because what else is going to funnel through in
That's all I need to fucking say, guy.
Drop the mic.
I fully agree. I think Kelce is lined up right now this year to see a even higher uptick in targets from Patrick Mahomes, as two are comfortable with each other. They're the only holdovers. People are going to talk up Mecole Hardman, but like, if you're that goddamn fast at football, who is it? And I'm gonna throw the name out there. Ercolano on BDGE brings it up all the time. If you're that fucking fast and you haven't been that good at football for this long, maybe you're just not that fucking good at football.
Yeah.
So forget about Mecole Hardman. I think Juju's interesting, but I don't think he's the kind of guy that's going to do what Tyreek Hill did for that offense. They lose track of like, well, Tyreek Hill was this big deep threat guy. Well, no, he was just fast as shit. His average depth of target was not that high. Yeah. Most of his deep plays were broken plays, and he just busted it. But still, the safeties and the corners have to play to that speed, and so they have to back off.
Yeah.
I think without that speed there and the minimal replacement they put in, the only speed factor they really brought in was MVS, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. That's going to look ugly. It'll be interesting to see how much the safeties are able to creep down and limit those seam gaps that Kelce makes a living in with the linebackers and the space they have between the safeties. But if any of those wide receivers, and I even got to talk about the rookie Sky Moore, if he can come in and have any form of have to pay attention to from the defense and get some pressure off of Kelce, there's another guy. Like, how do you not see him seeing 160 targets this year as the tight end with Patrick Mahomes? And they've just done it year after year after year.
Well, and that's where I was focusing on plays breaking down.
Mm-hmm.
You have Juju, who, he runs slants and stops.
Everything from the inside.
Yeah. I mean, and then so, Sky Moore, he's going to be your rookie who's going to be pushed around by some vet corners that are out there, especially in the AFC West. Plays are going to break down, and it's going to go to Kelce because he knows how to get open in space and find those little pockets. It's not going to be awesome. It's not going to be 50, 70-yard passes. It's going to be one pass 5 yards, one pass 7 yards, one pass 8 yards.
Oh, another one to look at is Kelce's air yards. He had 971 air yards last year. That's 60.7 per game. That's a lot of air yards for a tight end. He was fourth in that, but you got to think he's not the burner tight end. Right?
No, I think that comes down because the volume's going to go up in shorter space.
It could potentially, I agree with that. But he played 251 snaps in the slot. That's 28.4%. So a little over a quarter of his snaps were in the slot. That's where I feel like this year that number might go up a little bit. Instead of having him in line, I could see them splitting him out a little bit, coming with more 3 and 4 wide receiver sets, and just moving Kelce around to get him his one-on-one coverage, and just feed the shit out of this guy. He's a fucking beast. I mean, his track record speaks for itself.
Oh, yeah. So, Beast, who is yours that's going to feast?
The fucking beast from the East, Mark Andrews. This dude is a fucking animal, man. He looked so good last year. Even with Lamar missing, 5 games Lamar missed last year? I have the stats for him. There it is.
Week 12 on.
I actually have the stats for it here. How stupid am I? Read your notes, Michael. Once again, he's going to be the focal point of the Ravens' passing attack. Hollywood's departure was a clear sign that Baltimore is more comfortable with Andrews leading the target share than they were with Brown having 145. Another dominant season that worked for him. The changing at the guard at the top 10 on the leaderboard, I think, is honest. I think this kid is the one that overtakes Kelce as a team that uses the tight ends as its focal point. He's young enough. He doesn't have any of those things hanging over him. In 5 games without Lamar last year, 50 targets, 43 catches, 538 yards, 4 touchdowns. That's 149.3 fantasy points, 29.66 per game. That's without Lamar. Okay. And then you look at his finishing stats on the year, just he balls out. 145 vacated targets with Hollywood leaving, 348 intended air yards on 56 seam routes, over double the next tight end, which was Gronk at 156 yards. This kid pushes the seam. And you got to think about how Baltimore's offense runs, the play action, the RPO system, all the running they do. Mark Andrews down the seam. It's where the kid made a living this year. However, he still showed out in the short to intermediate route areas, and I compared him and Kelsey. Kelsey last year ran 275 routes. They were either short or intermediate. So we're talking digs, hitches, slants, quick hits. 275 routes, 56 targets, 45 catches, 56 targets, 45 catchable, 39 catches for 434 yards. Mark Andrews, 245 routes, 52 targets, 40 that were catchable, 37 caught for 428 yards. His productivity and efficiency last year was off the charts. This is really hurting my Lamar hit because this guy's so fucking good. He was number 1 in receptions last year.
It was hard to have Lamar as one and not bring Andrews with him.
I mean, we could flip a coin right now. That's
the first thing in my notes. This was a coin flip. Andrews was a coin flip with Kelsey because, like, they're both getting just a ridiculous amount of targets.
Yep. And then, of course, this is all redundant. Led the league last year as tight ends and receiving yards. Was number 3 in yards after the catch with 431. Unrealized air yards, number 1. A lot of that came from the seam routes that Tyler Huntley couldn't hit his ass on. An 8.3% touchdown rate. That's fucking crazy. That means every 8.3 times a guy touches the ball, he's catching a touchdown.
So
fantasy points game. Yeah, his fantasy points per game were 17.7. His expected fantasy points per game, which the expected fantasy points per game has to do with overall offensive efficiency. Yeah, overall projected offensive efficiencies versus what he actually took out. So it basically takes out like those fluke big ass plays that came out of fucking nowhere. It was a 1.94 differential of 15.8. I only want to bring that up, and it's funny, I'm kind of digging my own guy, but
it's okay.
Yeah, just like I said earlier with Lamar about their game script differential, I think that played a lot into a lot of the stats that came out this year. You could even attest to me saying last year how high I was on Hollywood Brown.
Oh, it's still.
Then you watch the tail off. Yeah, even after his tail off, you realize later in the year that it was because those games got tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter. But the Baltimore Ravens were getting their asses kicked at the beginning of the year, and they were always playing from behind. If you remember, they had come behind victories every week for Lamar. So I think some of those numbers go down.
I had to look and see if Patrick Queen was hurt all last year, just because, like, wait, their team defense just wasn't good. Like, was he hurt?
No, they had their secondary went down.
No,
a lot of guys in the secondary in Baltimore got hurt. So it'll be interesting to see how they all come back. Mark Andrews, 317 slot snaps last year. That was number 2 in the NFL. That's a hell of a lot of slot snaps. 26.6% target share was number 1 in the NFL among tight ends. And then we're going to keep going back to this, the 145 vacated targets from Hollywood. Where are those going to go, right? You're going to either deal with a handful of James Proche or Duvernay, or you're going to deal with Bateman, right? I think a lot of those targets of the 145, even if you only see 20 more of those. Oh, no, right? What was his targets? How many targets do you have this year? Come on, Michael, don't ask questions, answer them. I don't have that number. He had 20 deep targets, was number 1 in the NFL among tight ends, and 20 red zone targets, which was number 1 in the NFL. He caught 14 of those red zone targets. Andrews has the ability to continue success from last year, but he could also exceed what he put on the field last year. He could come out with a more productive Lamar, which you're hoping for. Yeah. Healthy JK and Gus coming back takes pressure off of him. He could see less coverage. The play action's helping him out. Again, the 145 vacated targets. Where are those going to go?
Usually RPO rollout. What a ridiculous play in Baltimore.
Usually vacated targets historically have gone to the running back. But how can they go to the running backs when the quarterback doesn't throw the ball to the running back?
He's going to run it.
Yeah, so where are those targets going to go?
Oh, you mean the number 1 quarterback's just going to keep running and then throw more?
I should
make him my quarterback 1.
Fuck nah. My projected stat line for Andrews next year, and this is actually the only guy that I put a projected stat line for because I was that impressed when I got into it. 180 targets, 125 catches, 1,400 to 1,500 yards, and 10 to 13 touchdowns. Stomping at tight end 1. Stomping.
If you have Andrews and Jefferson by your predictions, that's 370 targets between the two of them.
Yep. And I think it fits. Everywhere you look at it, the more you try to break it down, the talent that's around them, what they're stepping into, right? So Andrews is stepping in with the most talented receiving piece around him is second-year Rashad Bateman, who didn't really show out that great last year, but he showed as a good possession wide receiver. So I think a lot of the downfield stuff with the seam routes.
And to me, that was that little differential to get him between Kelsey and Andrews was what else is there?
Yep.
I mean, Bateman is a viable red zone target. And the Chiefs don't really have that discerned type player, not even in their backfield.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. That Chiefs one, man, I keep wanting to go back to that. Like the vacated targets thing, it's got me thinking a lot about CAH. Like, does he actually come out and maybe become the passing down guy? And especially because they brought in Rojo, who can't catch a goddamn ball with fuck.
Rojo can catch.
He can't fucking catch. That guy's piss poor at catching the fucking football. Get out of here.
Okay. He's just terrible. He's terrible at pass blocking. That's why.
No. He can't catch. He can't catch.
All right.
He's got those
Before
USC
we get into all of that, he must have given them to Darnold. All right, so we have my number 1 QB. We got Lamar, CMC, my running back, CeeDee Lamb as my wide receiver, Kelsey as my tight end. Who you got?
My number 1's Justin Herbert at quarterback. Running back is Jonathan Taylor. Wide receiver, Justin Jefferson. Tight end is Mark Andrews. Take it to the bank, boys.
All right. Roll us out of here.
Fuck off, y'all.